After weeks of uncertainty, investors may be finally getting some good news. A tentative ceasefire framework has been announced involving Iran. Oil markets are showing signs of stabilizing, and SpaceX continues drawing major investor attention after its historic IPO. And Bitcoin, it appears to be finding its footing after a volatile few weeks. So today, we're talking about what all of this may mean for investors, homeowners, and anyone trying to understand where the economy could be headed next. I'm Kyle Grimshaw, and this is the Texas Market Brief. Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Kyle Grimshaw with the Grimshaw Home Group. Today is June 16th, 2026, and boy, do we have a lot to talk about. Let's jump right in. Let's start with the biggest geopolitical story. The United States and Iran have agreed to a tentative ceasefire framework that includes reopening the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important energy shipping routes. Now, does that mean the situation is permanently resolved? No. A ceasefire is not the same thing as lasting peace, and details remain unclear, but it does reduce uncertainty, and markets tend to respond well when uncertainty begins to ease. That's one reason we've seen less panic around energy supplies compared to just a few weeks ago. There are also ongoing negotiations related to Iran's nuclear program, with additional details expected over the next 60 days. So while the conflict may not fully be behind us, investors now have a clearer path forward than they did recently. Let's take a moment to connect the dots. If energy supplies remain stable, oil prices generally face less upward pressure. If oil prices stabilize, inflation concerns may ease. And if inflation concerns ease, Treasury yields can stabilize. And if Treasury yields stabilize, mortgage rates may eventually have more room to improve. Notice the word may. Nothing is guaranteed. But fewer geopolitical disruptions generally create a more favorable environment for consumers and businesses. For Texas homeowners, buyers, and investors, that's something worth watching. Now let's talk about SpaceX. This remains one of the market's biggest stories after its historic IPO. Shares surged above the IPO price in the company's debut, pushing it to a valuation above $2 trillion. And now options trading has launched with heavy volume as investors look for more ways to participate. I know many viewers, including myself, were fortunate enough to receive allocations through Robinhood, but here's what interests me the most. This isn't just a stock story, it's a Texas story. When companies attract this level of capital, they create ripple effects. Jobs, suppliers, infrastructure, innovation, and eventually housing demand. That's why I think SpaceX is one of the most important companies to watch over the next decade. Now let's shift to Bitcoin. After a sharp drop earlier this month, Bitcoin appears to be stabilizing in the mid $60,000 range. Whether you're bullish or bearish on crypto, Bitcoin remains one of the assets investors watch as a measure of risk appetite. When investors feel confident, money often flows toward higher risk assets. When uncertainty rises, those assets often come under pressure. Personally, I think Bitcoin remains one of the most fascinating indicators of investor psychology, not because it predicts the future, but because it tells us how investors are feeling right now. Now, before anyone assumes this is an all-clear sign, it's not. A lot of people are asking, when will the war in Ukraine end? And the honest answer is that nobody knows. And while some risk may be easing in one part of the world, others remain unresolved. The same goes for the tensions involving China, Japan, the Philippines, and critical trade routes throughout the Pacific. Markets continue monitoring these developments because global trade routes remain essential to the world economy. The important thing to remember here is this: investors do not need perfection, but they do pay very close attention to clarity. And right now, those situations still lack clarity. Here's my takeaway. The world still has plenty of challenges, but over the last week, we've seen signs that some major risks have been moving in a more constructive direction. A tentative ceasefire framework, more stability in energy markets, strong capital investment through companies like SpaceX, and signs that investors may be becoming a little bit more comfortable taking risk again. That doesn't mean we're entering a perfect environment, but it does suggest that the headlines aren't all negative, and that's worth recognizing. If you found today's episode helpful, make sure to subscribe. And I have two questions for you today. What are you watching most closely right now? Oil, SpaceX, or Bitcoin? And do you think the second half of 26 will be calmer than the first half? I'm Kyle Grimshaw with the Grimshaw Home Group. Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Texas Market Brief. I'll see you tomorrow.